Right, very good. Well, thank you, Vicky, and thank you, everybody. We are going to talk about introducing the power of Gen A for managers. Uh, I am, as Vicky said, been part of HDI for a long time. I've been a member for over 20 years, and I've been on the board for over 15 years. I've got over 20 years of leadership experience in service and support, and I'm currently the founder and chief customer experience officer at SVI Alliance, my new company that I just started. So, what we are going to do is we're going to drive into generative AI and the best practices for that. And what I want this presentation to be is more of an interactive, an introduction. What I'm noticing as I'm talking with individuals is they have many different views of AI, Gen AI. What are we going to do with this new tool? That what is a large language model? What are all of these AI first mindset? What are these different buzzwords that are out in the industry? We're going to talk about those as well. But I'm not going to dive too deep into it. This is going to be an introduction, get people more familiar with how to actually interact with these generative AI tools, and then we can do some live demos as well. But how I like to present is feel free and raise your hand if you want to ask a question. I'll ask Vicky and the other board members to kind of monitor that as well and interrupt me if they do see anything as well. All right, let's get started. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So we're first going to go over the AI revolution. What is going on? How did we get here as humans? What is generative AI versus just regular artificial intelligence? What is an AI first mindset? What does that actually mean? And then we're going to go through some practical applications of it, and then we're going to do some final tips and takeaways after that. All right, so AI revolution. So, artificial intelligence. People talk about this buzz. Oh, AI is new. It's this new technology. It's going to take over the world. Well, the word artificial intelligence was actually introduced in 1955, believe it or not. There was a study that there was a research project actually on artificial intelligence, and that's when it was first introduced and first explored in that particular period of time. So it's been around for a long time. So in that study, one of the quotes that I saw there was uh, pretty revealing. It said, "An attempt will be made to find out how to make machines use language, form abstracts and concepts, solve kinds of problems now reserved for humans, and improve themselves. We think that a significant advance can be made in one or more of these problems if we carefully selected a group of scientists and worked together for the summer." And that was back in 1955. So it's amazing to think about where we are. But that statement in itself that was actually made in 1955, the link at the bottom there, you can read the article yourself. But it sounds like what's actually doing today, and we'll dive into that as far as why didn't it happen in 1955 and why is it happening now. So we'll dive into that. All right, so how did we get there in all of our different revolutions? So, industrial revolution came first. So, in the industrial revolution, I'm trying to paint a picture on AI and how this actually relates. So, the industrial revolution, so you had physical work that was done by humans, horses, different animals, and we had this boom of energy. So it was really the energy revolution, and production was increased to be able to have more things, make more things more efficiently, so that we have that. Now, during that time, because it took a lot to be able to build these factories and have the labor to run these machines and everything, the change was fairly slow. But as we started to increase the technology and how we manufacture things, and it did speed up a little bit later. Then after that, what do you think, Vicky? The digital revolution. So, summarized in one word, the internet. So you take what was printed on paper and books, and you actually have this digital revolution to be able to have that. So that time you took information and knowledge, and then we digitized it so that we had accessibility for it. So it democratized the knowledge as opposed to an industrial revolution where we're democratizing the production of things. Okay. And then the speed of the change increased significantly because anything was digitized. You can send something instantly across the world now that the internet is there. And then so we started getting all of these access to information where you could read a book that was published in Europe, in the United States immediately because it was digitized to be able to have that information. And so now we started collecting all of this information digitally and have access to everything. Then the AI revolution came. And then that took all of the cognitive stuff that we have, that we've collected in the digital revolution, and gave it an ability to be able to learn into these models. So now we're democratizing the experience, not necessarily the knowledge in this particular revolution. And then where we thought the speed of change and the digital revolution was fast, it's nowhere the speed at which we're having it now in the AI revolution. I mean, it's a quantum hyper speed change that we have. And any changes that happen in this particular period of time that we're in right now is just astronomically fast. And I'll give you an example. When DeepSeek came out, how fast did that change the whole AI industry? I mean, literally overnight, when DeepSeek was released, it just changed everything. So the speed at which we are changing is faster than I can even comprehend. But here's what I do know. What I do know is that if we don't get on board and understanding it, then we're going to fall behind. And that's what we're going to talk about now to be able to help all of you get on board to be able to help. So I'm going to pause there a minute. So we talked about all these different revolutions. We talked about how AI has actually been around for a while. Any feedback, any thoughts from people on that?
I had no idea it had been around that long. That's actually kind of wild that,
Yeah.
you know, it to see that it was so slow coming and then now it's just like zooming
Mhm.
ahead.
Yes.
So interesting.
So for us in this industry in service and support, think about it this way. AI and machine learning has been around for a while. I mean, how long has our KCS principles been around? A couple decades. So back then, the algorithms there of searching, Google and searching, and then taking that search and presenting information in front of other information, you had this business intelligence, machine learning algorithms that were built into there. That has been around. That's artificial intelligence. Right now, what's happening is you have these large language models that are out that then present the information in more of a human-like form, and it's able to teach itself too. These models are being changed. Donald had talked about it at the very beginning of the meeting, where all these versions are coming out so quick. Chat GPT version 3, 4, and now 4.5. It's just changing so quick. So, any other thoughts?
I thought it was interesting the phrasing you used, democratizing production, democratizing knowledge, now democratizing experience. So that's a fun little way to think about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So as an example, these images that you see on the screen here, I just asked Chat GPT to create these for me for the presentation. These are unique images that were created like this for me on this presentation. So okay, so how did I get these images? How do we go forth? So in the service and support industry, so what I want to do is to kind of relate AI and specifically generative AI with what all of us on this phone do as a living. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. So 30 to 40 years ago, some of us were around then. Vicky. So back then we had centralized support. So we created centralized support. So before then, you physically, people in IT, anybody who helped in technology, you physically had to go to the place and fixed it, right? You physically had to fix computers instead of doing it remotely. Well, 30 to 40 years ago, we were able to centralize the support, the creation of call centers to be able to better utilize staff and efforts. And the reason we're able to do this is the computing power got to the point where we could actually do that. So the phone systems were able to do round robin. They were able to do different things than just an analog line coming in that then allowed us to be able to have this group of people to be able to take phone calls and help people during that time. Okay, so that's the centralized support centers 30 to 40 years ago. Then, say 20 to 30 years. Of course, this is all dependent upon where you are. Then the internet came, and in the internet, before when you got support, you as the user had to seek that support out. You had to call somebody and then they had to help you because you had no other way to get help. Now, 20 or 30 years ago, the internet came out and you had the data delivered to you. And then you had the digital data collection of everything. So you could actually find out answers yourself in some cases. Then after that, 10 to 20 years ago, you had self-service. So after we collected all this data, then KCS came in where we had knowledge-centered service. It was actually knowledge-centered support back then, but you had the ability to seek out and find answers yourself because all the information is there. We have different channels to be able to get support. You had text or email. You had portal to be able to log into to a website to be able to do all of that stuff. So you see how this is progressing over decades, right? To be able to increase service and support. And then 5 to 10 years ago, you had predictive support. So we had self-service. User, if you had an issue, you could seek out the answer and get it yourself. Well, 5 to 10 years ago, we started to have predicted support. So that started kind of the AI and the machine learning to be able to have these algorithms to say, well, when this error message comes up, this hardware device is probably going to fail. So let's dispatch someone to replace this motor or whatever it is. Oh, I raised my hand and my hand went up. That's funny. How do I put my hand down? I don't know. It'll go down in a minute. So in the 5 to 10 years ago, you got predictive support to be able to do that. And again, that's where AI really started. Now, around 2 years ago, now we have wide availability of generative AI. ChatGPT was released in the fall of 2022. Less than 3 years ago was the very first release of the publicly available, widely available, if you will, generative AI model. So in our particular case, though, is generative AI in the service and support industry, is that something that we should use or should not use? What do you think? Feedback.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Just the reflection of what you see on the page here, in the speed at which things have changed recently as opposed to in the past. What are your thoughts on that and generative AI? So, Eileen, you got your hand up?
Yeah, so I have already found ChatGPT and stuff like that to be extremely useful. My dad is actually a software engineer, and he too, like we're comparing notes because
Yeah.
I do IT support and he creates actual code. And so it's been very interesting because it's like I'll use it to kind of make a very basic PowerShell script so that way I can kind of like tweak it and then
Yeah.
move ahead. And he too has found where it's like it kind of helps take away some of like the I, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on how to phrase it, but it
Yeah.
kind of helps like take away some of the like schlag you have to kind of jump through and so before you can focus on the main thing.
Yes.
And so now he gets to jump ahead.
Hmm.
I do hear and understand why some people are definitely concerned about its potential for abuse. But
Hmm.
again, I also see it as a very valuable tool that can really help with tech support in general in terms of like I can jump ahead and cut my resolve time by like, you know, 3/4 or even a half. Like, you know, it's been very um crazy in a lot of ways. It feels like science fiction.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing. I think you hit on something that's very important, and I'm going to touch on it a few times here, is that this generative AI and these AI models are really a tool to assist the human. It's not meant to replace, and it won't replace human because it doesn't have the ability to cognitively rationalize and make decisions. It's a tool, just as you said, to be able to assist you to do things easier, faster, potentially better, so that us as humans can focus more on the stuff that we need to use our brain on, as opposed to all these tasks that are just there as simple tasks. So good point.
Also helped edit my emails so they don't sound as angry.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah, there are enormous opportunities to boost productivity for
Mhm.
the entire IT service and support team.
Yeah.
Uh, a key consideration is uh, privacy and security and
Yes.
choosing a secure LLM.
Hmm.
Fortunately, a number of the leading IT service management platform software manufacturers
Hmm.
have been introducing more uh, generative AI capabilities, and most
Hmm.
recently, agentic AI capabilities
Hmm.
to facilitate, expedite incident remediation and problem root cause analysis and resolution.
Yeah.
So it's an
Yeah.
exciting time, thanks to
It is.
AI/generative AI and now agentic AI.
Hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Jim. You hit on a point I'll visit here in a little bit, is the security of it and the caution of it. It all goes back to, this is a tool. You need to treat it as a tool, and you need, the caution is there too. So revisiting what I said before, as far as AI has been around for a long time, why is it now that we're able to do these wide availability of generative AI models? And the answer to that is really the hardware. The computing hardware has finally caught up with the algorithms that have been developed in the past to be able to do the power. You've heard these huge data centers going up. The computing power needed to be able to run these models is enormous. And the statement of computing power doubling in size every year and a half to 2 years is still in play. And it finally got to the point where the GPUs and everything that's used to be able to do these and run these models have finally reached to a point that we can use it on a wide scale and public ability. So that's really what's going on. But a lot of people are sitting here, as far as you've probably heard it, we need to do more AI. We need to have some things. You have these executives in the company see AI and they say, well, Vicky, you need to implement AI so that we can do things twice as fast. And I'm sure many of you have heard that. And really, what is that? It really is probably FOMO, fear of missing out on, more so than reality, because AI is not going to fix everything. AI is not going to be able to make those decisions for you. So, how did we get there? Well, has anybody seen this Gartner hype cycle before? Nobody? This is introduction. Okay. So Gartner developed this hype cycle actually back in 1995 is when they first developed this hype cycle. And I won't go into a lot of it, but in general terms, you have the technology trigger, which is, like, we're using generative AI as an example here. It was introduced a little less than 3 years ago. As far as wide availability of generative AI, generative AI has been around a while, but just publicly wide availability of that. And so it's reached a peak of inflated expectations. So I just mentioned a few of those. You have these executives, these people that think, oh, AI can fix this. Hey, we can just replace our support staff and just do AI bots and it will change everything. So the expectations are a little higher than what reality is, right? And then what Gartner says is, after that peak is done here, and I would argue that we're probably at the peak right now with generative AI, is that it will then go down to this trough of disillusionment here, where you'll start seeing some negative press about it. I've seen, doing my research, there have been lawyers that have used generative AI to research for them defending a court case, and they take what the model has given them as truth, but then it wasn't really truth, and then they lose the case, and then they're sued themselves. And so you're going to start seeing some of this negative stuff that comes out, and then they'll be down in this trough here. And then we'll actually do a slope of enlightenment to say, okay, it wasn't what we thought it was, but it's better than what it is. And then we'll get to this plateau of productivity, and then it'll start doing a mainstream, and then it'll be widely accepted within the industry, or whatever industry that's actually using it. So that's what Gartner has said, and I think it's something that's quite real here. Jay.
So ChatGPT was released at the end of 2022. We are now, 2.5
Right.
years later,
Mhm.
and you're thinking that we're now at the peak of inflated expectations. What do you think of as a potential timeline between now and when we're going to see that plateau of productivity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's going to depend on the industry in itself. There are a few industries that are embracing it more than others. Legal seems to be the one that has embraced it pretty well. Um, I think some industries are going to go down lower than other industries. So I think what's going to happen is that we need to try and figure out a way to be able to have that trough not be so deep and kind of go like this to be able to do that. The time frame, I wish I had a crystal ball to be able to know that. It's been almost 3 years to probably get up to this peak now. Unless they come out with more features and functions that we're not familiar with now, I think we'll start going down. And again, I don't even want to speculate, but I do know that the speed of change that is there, it won't be that long. It won't be decades.
Right.
It won't. It'll be fairly quick, just because of the speed of which everything is changing. I mean, the models are coming out, the version changes are coming out so quick that it should get to this plateau fairly soon. Yeah. Good. Any other thoughts on that? All right. So now that we've talked about AI, we've talked about the history, how it fits within our industry, what is generative AI as opposed to AI in of itself? So this is how I'll explain it. So the first thing to be aware of is that generative AI in of itself is really just a smart intern. It doesn't replace a person. It is something that is extremely intelligent because let's face it, these models that are out there today literally have all human knowledge that has been digitized available at its resource. So it's pulling information. The whole internet is available for it to be able to research, to be able to give you an answer. So it's an extremely smart intern. However, it's still just an intern and it doesn't know you and what your views are, what backgrounds that you have, your personality types, all of that. It doesn't know that. So generative AI is something that you need to tell it everything. Okay. And what it does is it's a human-like response. It creates output. So you input something and it outputs. Always outputs. It doesn't error. It doesn't say, hey, I don't understand. It gives you a response no matter what you put into it. Okay. So it takes, it's not like Google where you search it and it gives you an answer. It takes all of human knowledge and it puts it into what they call as tokens, and it splices human language together in a way that when you give it something, then it will output. And here's an example of what it will give you. So if I tell you, Donald, if I tell you burger plus Coke plus what's the likely next pattern?
Fries.
Fries, exactly. So it knows that in all these situations, um, when you do these patterns, it knows that most likely Donald's going to want fries when he has a burger and a Coke, or the vast majority of people. So again, what you give it, it will give a response, right or wrong. And that leads into hallucinations. So when you're talking about generative AI and hallucinating, has everybody heard about hallucinations? And you know what that is? Vicky's shaking her head no.
I thought that was when you like use too much of a controlled substance and things happen.
I guess
No?
you can do that too.
Nobody's saying you're wrong.
So hallucination, when we're talking about generative AI, is it gives you bogus information. So when you ask it a question or when you put in an input, it's going to give you an output. It wants to please you. So think of it as this, chat GPT. It wants to please you. It's going to give you an answer regardless. And if you don't give it enough detailed information as an input, then it's just going to grab whatever is out there and give it to you. And in a lot of cases, that's a hallucination that happens. When I mentioned about that lawyer, presenting a court case, and he was using generative AI, he or she, I don't know if it was he or she, using generative AI, and then they asked generative AI, what cases are related to this or whatever questions that they asked, and then they presented that data as fact when it really wasn't. The model was actually hallucinating and just giving a wrong answer. Okay, so if you hear of hallucination, that's what that means. Okay, so these inputs of tokens and then outputs are what they call as these large language models, or LLMs. So it's trained to communicate in human like form, And think of it as a really smart autocomplete. So you input a bunch of things and then it will output something else. So in generative AI forms, it's really good at reasoning, giving pattern recognition, but it's really bad at factual output. And you may have seen where people have asked it to add numbers or divide numbers, and it just doesn't work that way. It's really just a bunch of tokens, then it kind of realizes a pattern, and then it outputs. And so it's really bad at facts stuff, but it's really good at reasoning and pattern recognition. Okay. Whew. Questions about that? What do you think, Vicky?
Interesting. And it also scares me that I might have heard of people using it to take like statistics tests
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
stuff. But that really puts it in perspective of it I like that it wants to please you. Like it's going to give you an answer whether or not that answer is true.
Correct.
And that, which brings up another point, which is about bias. And so,
Yes.
because I'm always concerned about diversity issues, it's like it's pulling that from a foundation that might have bias built into it. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and you can even think of it as hallucination bias or bias hallucination, because it will, unless you give it the details. So I recently took a class on AI prompting, and one of the examples that they gave is if you're wanting to generate a picture of something, or if you're asking a question about something, the bias of that is highly towards people who are right-handed. So when you ask to be able to generate a picture or something, they always do something right-handed because the vast majority of the population is right-handed. But if I remember right, Donald, you're actually left-handed, right? Did I remember that right?
Yes, you are.
Look at that. So there's few people that but you can get around that. You just have to give it so much information and stress the fact that I'm left-handed, and do it that way. So that's just one very small example. Everything else as far as output can be biased towards other things as well. Yeah. Good point, Vicky.
I do, Jamie, like when I ask, because I use it to help me say things better.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that I can tell ChatGPT specifically make it sound more like me.
Yes.
And it has learned a little bit about my speech patterns and how I communicate. And so it's really interesting to me to see like the academic response and then see the make it sound like Vicky response.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's key is when you start using these models, it will learn because it remembers everything that you input and it remembers you interacting with it. There's also ways, so for example, in ChatGPT, there's a way for you to go into your profile and input information about yourself so that you can input your whole personality profile test results that you have on a thing, and it will actually modify it accordingly. Yeah. Jay.
Hey, so I'm stuck on something you said a moment ago, and I might have missed a little bit of context, so I'm hoping you can clarify.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier that it's very bad at facts, but it's very good at kind of reasoning and pattern
Yeah.
recognition, which I totally get. The part I'm confused by is, for example, I'm gonna use the example of the attorney who asked about case history. That felt like a fact that it messed up. So I'm curious what the difference is between when it's good at facts versus when it's bad at facts.
It's always bad at facts, regardless. So the way generative AI works is you take an input of something, it takes that input and it looks at patterns of how humans have communicated, and it will then bring it together and then output what it thinks the next pattern is. So think about the hamburger, the Coke. and then most
Yeah.
likely they want fries. And so it'll give you fries. So unless you say, hamburger fries, it's a really cold, it's a really, hot day, and I'm looking for something refreshing and with milk substance, and then it'll give you a milkshake as an example. But if you just give it a burger and Coke, it's going to say fries because that's most likely what's going to happen. So in that particular, I don't know the details about that court case, but in
Right.
that particular time, that person might have just done a very short prompt and then just gave whatever cases it found first as answers.
Just
Because
interesting.
it's just giving a response to a pattern. It takes your input as pattern, not as actual language, and then we'll give you a response to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
It's just how it's designed.
That's a good way to think about it. It's like just being bad at facts. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right. Well, let's show Chat GPT here a little bit. So those of you who said that you've worked with Chat GPT, my assumption, because it was my interaction with it prior to how I've dived into this taking this class and whatnot, you've probably typed in an input, correct? Is that what you did, Vicky? Okay. So on the phone, on the actual app itself, there is a voice. I'm going to try my blurring here. There's a voice thing in the lower right-hand corner. So it's a white circle that looks like little voice things. So if you have it, you can actually have a conversation with Chat GPT. So let me do a few things, and let me introduce my co-presenter here, Chat GPT. So, hi, Chat GPT. I'm presenting to a bunch of service and support leaders, learning how generative AI is used in their jobs. Can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Here's how I'd introduce myself for your audience. Hello, everyone. I'm ChatGPT, a generative AI assistant designed to help service and support leaders like you work smarter, faster, and more efficiently. Think of me as your AI-powered teammate, ready to assist with everything from drafting responses to summarizing case notes, analyzing trends, and even improving knowledge-based content. My goal isn't to replace you, but to enhance the way you work by handling repetitive tasks, providing instant insights, and giving you more time to focus on strategic decisions and customer relationships. Today, I'll help you explore how generative AI can transform service and support, making teams more productive and customer experiences even better. Let's dive in and see how AI can become your most valuable support tool. Would you like me to tweak the tone or focus on anything specific?
So there you go. Just by me inputting, so let me analyze this a little bit. So I said I'm presenting. I want you to introduce yourself, but I also told it that my audience is service and support leaders. So it tweaked its introduction to him or her to be able to then cater to what the audience was, which was service and support leaders. Does that make sense?
That's really amazing. I've been using it by typing. I haven't asked it
Right.
any questions.
To actually have a conversation with it is amazing, Vicky. Because it will, so at the end there, it actually asked, would you like me to tweak the tone of my introduction? It will ask you follow-up questions, and you will go back and forth with it and actually have a conversation. And because of the large language models that are out there, it actually sounds human-like on its response, right?
I'm thinking I may not need my husband anymore.
So just because I see Donald here, I'm gonna tweak it a little bit.
All right, pick on me, Jamie. Go ahead.
Hi, ChatGPT. I'm presenting to a bunch of service and support leaders. One of them in particular is Donald, and he speaks Spanish. Can you introduce yourself in Spanish, please?
Por supuesto. Aquí tienes una introducción en español para Donald y los demás asistentes. Hola a todos, soy ChatGPT, un asistente de inteligencia artificial diseñado para ayudar a los líderes de servicio y soporte a trabajar de manera más inteligente, rápida y eficiente. Piensa en mí como un compañero de equipo impulsado por IA, listo para ayudar con tareas como redactar respuestas, resumir notas de casos, analizar tendencias y mejorar la documentación de soporte. Mi objetivo no es reemplazar a las personas, sino potenciar su trabajo, eliminando tareas repetitivas, proporcionando información rápida y permitiéndoles enfocarse en decisiones estratégicas y en la experiencia del cliente. Hoy
That was pretty awesome.
la inteligencia artificial general.
Here, I'll stop it.
Yeah.
I have no idea if that was right or not.
It was super right. It was super
was?
right.
Okay.
Super
There you
right.
go.
Super
There you go.
awesome. Yeah.
So you can do that in however you want. So you can introduce, you can have these conversations with it, and that's probably the easy if you're used to kind of this input with an output like a Google search and a response on a Google search, and you want to really dive into understanding large language models and generative AI, that is the quickest and easiest way to do that is just start talking to it.
And
Okay.
Jamie, I have
Yeah.
a question because I had to step away from my desk because I'm
Sure.
at work. Which tool were you using to create the voice model?
Chat GPT, and then
Okay.
yeah. So next to a microphone, it actually has a circle with voice lines in the middle, and I use that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Ability for support. I mean, like we could use this when we have different languages, and we used to need people
Good.
that were bilingual on our support teams, and I think we still should. But I mean, what if we had a language that we were really struggling with? Could it translate? I mean, I know there's translating tools, but I'm
Right.
thinking, I was in Italy a few weeks ago, and I was thinking how nice it would have been to say, can you help me
So keep
tell
in
me how to
mind,
ask for a bathroom in Italian, kind of thing.
yeah, but keep in mind, it's more conversational and pattern driven.
Okay.
Remember, the accuracy in certain things may not be there. So just to translate or to say something might not be a good use of that particular tool as far as GPT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Vicky, to help you out, Google itself has its own Google Translate tool that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And it
that's
works
what I
pretty
did
well.
use, but yeah, it did well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Who has heard of a first mindset? Anybody? Okay. So that's a buzz term that's out in the industry right now, is that what you want to do is you want to have an A first or AI first mindset. In other words, ask the question, how can AI help me with this? And start doing it that way. So, Eileen, I think you were talking earlier that it helps you to be able to do the monotonous things and to help you to be able to do these tasks. That's really what AI is built for. It's built to help the human do things faster and easier, to be able to come up with ideas that you never thought of before, to be able to do these monotonous tasks. But it's not built to actually make decisions. That is what the human does, and we haven't gotten there. Now, who's to say that models might mature enough to make those decisions? Possibly. But as of right now, it's not there yet. So let's talk about the AI first mindset. So first of all, it's thinking about how AI can enhance your work before you even start the task. So in other words, if you're contemplating doing something, like I did this for the presentation here, and I interacted with ChatGPT on presenting this, and so just do that first to be able to get some ideas. And it's only, again, it's an assistant. It doesn't know everything about you, and so just take that for what it's worth when it gives you a response or an output. So it's about collaboration between AI and humans, just as I said, is that you want to make sure that it is that collaboration. It doesn't replace humans, it helps humans. It's human plus AI is what should be the mindset to be able to do that. And it's really good at handling repetitive tasks, um, creativity, strategy. It has all of that built into it. So asking how can AI help me with this at the start of any task. You're writing a letter or a response to a customer complaint. How can I word this in a more meaningful way for the customer? Okay. What are the things that I need? I'm planning for a meeting. What are the things I need to ask myself to make sure that this meeting goes smoothly? And then it gives you ideas for then you to fill it in as a human. Don't just take what it has and copy and paste. That's the wrong thing to do. So AI first mindset embraces the idea of augmented intelligence in which you are not using AI to replace what you're doing, but rather help you do that job better. That's the whole purpose of it. And then consider starting your interactions first with AI in a conversation. So talk to it on your device as opposed to typing it in. And there's a link down at the bottom. Forbes has a pretty good article, and it's labeled "What is an AI first mindset?" and it goes through that to be able to explain to you what that mindset is. Okay. All right. Practical application. So here's the caution. And then we talked about, I think it was you, Jay, that we talked about the caution of it. So generative AI is plus to humans. That's the buzz terminology that the industry is using now. So it's human plus generative AI or generative AI plus human. It doesn't replace human. It is something that helps you do things, but it is just a tool. It always, you should always review the output before distributing it. And let me see if I can go back here. Yeah, so let's use this as an example. So this image here is something I asked ChatGPT to make for me for this presentation. Is there anything in this image that's strange to you by chance?
See a lot of extra fingers.
It's a lot of fingers.
Yeah, and I actually had this issue too when I was trying to get it to generate an image.
Yeah.
Like I told it the text I wanted in the image,
Mhm.
but it still gave me like gibberish language.
Yes. Yes. The text portion of it is something that's extremely difficult for ChatGPT. And ChatGPT uses DALL-E as its image generation engine. You can see in the little bubble, the little talk bubble there in the upper right-hand corner, it's supposed to say AI or something, but I don't know what it's saying right there. But yeah, so it's not exact. You have to review your output to make sure it's something that is good. The banner for advertising this particular session I generated with ChatGPT, and I had to go through multiple iterations in it. And to be honest, there was some stuff behind my picture that was all gibberish, and I just put my picture in front of it. Okay, I'm going to use this. So it's something that's not exact. It's something that you need to play with. And once it creates something, once it gives you an output, you can ask it to modify it. I don't really like this. I want you to modify it in this particular way. Or I want you to take this portion out and add this portion. Or it wants that interaction. Like I said, it wants to please you. So it wants you to interact with it to improve it. All right, let's go back. All right. Do not input personal identified information. So this is the security stuff. So if you are asking certain things, I mean, don't put your social security number in it. Don't put, it's like putting it out on the internet because it takes it and it puts it into its database for its model. So don't be putting that in there. And the caution here too is dependent upon the security policy within your company. Do not put any company confidential information inputted into it. You don't want to put in your budgetary numbers for Q1 and ask it to analyze it for your company that happens to be publicly traded. That would not go over well. So, but there are secure models that companies can purchase and use to keep information secure. It all depends on how your department embraces this AI technology. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know Georgia Tech has. Oh my God, I just Copilot. Yeah,
Yeah, Copilot.
we have
Microsoft,
Copilot,
yep.
and so if I understand it, Copilot, because it is a Georgia Tech instance, we are paying Copilot to keep that information exclusive to Georgia Tech, so that it will not, it's not publicly accessible. So I'm sure most companies have done something similar.
Yeah.
I think that was a big thing with Apple, right? Like, didn't Apple, like some of Apple's trade secrets get leaked because
Oh, I didn't hear that, but could be.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Just make sure you keep it secure. So the things I'm going to show you next are kind of things that you'll use to kind of help with things. It doesn't really involve company confidential information, but as you start using it, you'll want to input more things into it and just keep that at top of mind for sure. All right, so all of this is the output that you get. The quality of the output that you get is the quality of the prompt or the input that you put into it. So, what is the anatomy of a great prompt? Donald, I'm glad you asked. Well, so the answer to that is one, in your prompt, start off the prompt by saying, I want you to be in this role. I want you to be a creative writer. I want you to be a expert analyst. I want you to be a Harvard doctor or whatever you want it to be. As here, lawyer, copywriter, negotiation coach, tell it that, and then that helps it to be able to modify its output to that particular persona, if you will, and then give it clear and specific instructions. What exactly do you want it to do? Again, it doesn't know you. When we're having an interaction, so the example that I gave, I knew Donald spoke Spanish, right? The AI model doesn't know that. So you need to tell it everything that you want. Provide the context to it. Treat each session as if AI knows nothing about you. Provide full context from the very beginning. And you can even do chain prompts as well, is that if it doesn't give you exactly what you're looking for, you can give it more information to have the output being better and better and better over multiple prompts. Split the complex tasks. So if you don't want to write this whole book as a prompt, give it a little bit of information, have it output, and say, okay, I want to dive into this small portion of this output a little bit more, and I want to dive in a little bit more. You can do that, spread it across multiple tasks. And then the other thing is to stick to one topic per thread. As you're working in these generative AI models, each of these threads have different contexts built into it. So I just asked it to introduce itself in a service and support. Hey, I'm presenting. In that particular thread, I can then start talking about this particular presentation in that particular thread, and it still knows from the very beginning that I'm presenting to service and support professionals, as an example. Okay. Some other tips is giving it an example. So I want you, ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, I want you to look at this article. and I'm looking to match the style of this writer or this article in this particular thing I'm trying to create, and it will match that style. Explain who the output is for. So your output, is it for a CEO where it needs to be short and precise and just straight to the point and bullet points? Or is it an intern or a friend or a colleague? Or you explain that I want your output to be for this particular person or a persona. You can give it a persona as well. Specify an output format. So it doesn't just output in text. You can say, I would like the results to be in a table format. I would like the results to be in a graph. I would like it to be in a pie graph or a bar graph or a line graph. However you want that output, specify what that is. Ask it to give you questions to build a response. It's a wonderful, I've done this several times, is that I ask for something, and then at the end, I say, what else do you need to be able to accomplish this task? Asking that question at the end will reduce the amount of hallucinations that you get on your outputs. Because instead of just giving you an answer and it assuming a portion of it, it will actually ask you a question about it for clarification before it gives you the output. So you can do that as well. And then after it gives you the output, give it feedback. As I mentioned before, it wants to please you. So you can respond and say, oh, that's great. I really like this. Or, I really don't like that. And the reason I don't like it is this. Can you give me something else? And it will give you something else. So as an example, over several days, actually over a couple of weeks, I had an interaction with ChatGPT amongst other people too, but with ChatGPT and creating the name of my company that I created, and what was it, and what's the meaning behind it, and all of these things. And so it was really fascinating to go through that exercise to be able to come up with that result. All right. So in summary, your prompt has to have or should have the 3 C's, which is you have to have clarity within your prompt, give it context if you want to actually reference something else or whatever the contents, it's for this particular person persona or this person persona, and then be concise on what your prompt is. And if you have those 3 things, then that'll be a good quality prompt, and then you should get good quality output. So here are some practical things. This is just a small snippet. So act as a creative advisor. I need help brainstorming ideas on input, whatever you want. Can you suggest 10 innovative and practical ideas to get started? And just ask it to do that. It would be interesting. Can you help me refine these ideas and list the ideas? What are some potential challenges? Please provide feedback on these ideas. As an assistant, you can upload, and I've done this. You can upload a screenshot of your week calendar, and then ask it. Act as a personal assistant. Can you give me 10 ways I can make better use of my time in my calendar? And you'll be amazed at its response. I'd like feedback on this email presentation. Provide 5 questions that I will likely be asked about this presentation or email. Provide a list of areas that may not be clear in this presentation. So as you are getting ready for a presentation or something, again, be really careful. You don't want to have any company confidential information in there, but you can say, hey, take a look at this and look at this from a CEO standpoint. What questions is the CEO going to have about this? So I can prepare to be able to answer those questions ahead of time. So you could do that too. Write a calm personal response to a customer complaint about whatever it is. And it'll help you. Leading a team, I'm preparing for a meeting. Can you suggest 3 good questions I can ask a colleague to prepare for a meeting on whatever subject that you want? Or I'm having a hard time keeping my team engaged in a meeting. Can you provide some techniques that can help me to further increase engagement during the meeting? And as I mentioned earlier, these generative AI models, they have all human knowledge. So it knows what smart goal setting is. So you can tell it, hey, this is a goal that I've created. Compare it to what the smart goal setting framework is, and does it meet all of those guidelines? Whatever framework that you want, it will actually, it knows what it is. So just ask it. Or you can, is there a way that I can handle this particular thing differently? Those are some examples. So that's just, some small examples of things that you can ask it. Whew. What do you think? Any other questions?
Just so interesting. I didn't know that about the calendar. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry, Alan.
yeah. Eileen?
So have that one from January.
So I've actually used it to help me write performance reviews for my staff and
Oh,
develop
wow.
goals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I mean, again, you tweak it and stuff like that because it's
Yep.
not 100% correct, but it's been like a wonder, like basically it has been amazing for getting over the blank page syndrome.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
And that you explained perfectly what the AI first mindset is instead of staring at a blank page, just start talking to it and it'll generate ideas and stuff for you. So,
I have used it for presentations to just kind of do exactly that. Like,
mhm.
give me a presentation on women in IT, and it'll generate, like 10 different, it doesn't generate the slides, but it generates the text.
The text, yeah.
And then I take that and build, and it may end up completely different, but at least it got me thinking
Correct.
about what I was doing.
Correct. And you can even respond to it and to say on slide 6, you discussed this. What I want on slide 6 is blah, 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 blah. And it will change slide 6 for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also use it. So I do social media for HDI local chapters nationally, and I use it to help me write social media posts.
Yes.
So I'll like give it a bunch of information and say, write me a short LinkedIn post for this. And I often still tweak it, but it's just it's a tool.
Yes.
It's
the tool.
helping you use your time more wisely.
Yep. And then there's the favorite question of Miss Vicky. You can also ask it what your superpower is, which I did,
Yes.
and it was a very interesting response.
It scared me to death because when I asked it what my superpower was, it mentioned my sister in the response.
Mm-hmm.
And by her full name, it said, "You're a good supporter of blah, blah, blah."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how did it know my sister's name? But it did.
Yes.
And I guess it just scrubs, all of your social media or whatever you put out there publicly about yourself. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But now I don't know if you're going to mention this or not, Jamie, but you can also there's this app called Replica. Have y'all heard of it? Replica is an AI boyfriend, girlfriend, partner for you.
Uh-huh.
So you can literally sign up and it'll text you in the morning and tell
there
you
you
good
go.
morning, and you
Mhm.
can talk to it about things. I mean, I was
Yeah.
joking about replacing my husband, kind of, but yeah, it's evidently it's very powerful. So if for lonely people, if you want to
Yeah.
just like,
Of course. Of course. And that does lead me into not that particular one, but I do have others. So, final thoughts as we're closing up here. So, remember, generative AI is a tool. It's an assistant. You have to keep the human plus AI mindset when using generative AI. My encouragement to you is to just start using it. Start a conversation. Start talking to it. It will blow your mind. The AI first mindset. How can AI help me with this? As Eileen said, it gets you over that blank page stare. And then don't be afraid to get started. Just start talking to it and start getting some things. Now, we talked about ChatGPT a lot in generative AI, but as Vicky said, there are other tools out there. There's thousands out there. There's thousands. And this is just kind of get your mind working on what different tools are out there. So Dolly is a portion of the ChatGPT. It does the image generation. Gamma is there to create presentations. It's good at creating those presentations. So Vicky, what you were talking about, that ChatGPT just gives the text, that tool will actually create the presentations for you. So Vicky's like, oh. And then you have Jasper. I forget who talked about creating blog posts and other social media. That's really good at that. The Sinencia, is that how you pronounce that? Creates the videos and realistic avatars. So that's a tool that does that as well. Scribe creates process documentation and workflows. And then the Murph there is an AI voice generator. So you type in an input in text, and it will actually generate realistic voiceovers for you.
Yeah. And Jamie, I just wanted to add about the Synthesia app.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like my go-to is YouTube, and right now there are a lot of videos you can tell are AI generated. A lot of videos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can see that. So I think more than likely they're using this app called Synthesia to create videos for YouTube.
Yeah. And a lot of them are not free, right? You have to pay to use those tools. But again, it's like there's thousands and thousands of them out there. I was just trying to give you a good snapshot of the different functionalities that are out there. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. I hope I helped to be able to open your minds a bit on generative AI. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks so much. I want to add one for education because that's my world. There's one called Consensus, and it is a paid for, but it does academic research, and it'll give you responses with citations, which is interesting.
Okay.
So if any of you in school or have people in school, Consensus is a really good one.
Good.
All right.